Okay, hi everyone, my name is Danielle and this is my first YouTube video. I have written 5 novels and I just chose one of my favorites to read online. I hate how long it takes to publish a book, and it's not like I have connections to get priority over millions, so I just thought to give this story out to the public to hopefully get noticed much faster by a movie director or something crazy like that. Yes, I dream big. So if you're aching for a story that will knock your socks off, then pay close attention. I have to do this in parts because the YouTube time bar is limited, so you'll have to find the videos yourself to listen to the whole story in order. It's only 6 chapters, but it seems long because I have to put this on so many different YouTube videos, but stick with it. And I apologize ahead of time if my voice for my guy and girl characters begins to sound the same. And yes, I have different voices for some of my characters. I just want to read your comments, which I hope you leave because I would like some opinions about my story. This story is titled A Rare Bird. I hope you enjoy. Oh, and in case you're wondering, yes, that is my picture. Just so you have something to look at while I read. Basically, I suggest just closing your eyes and listening because my picture can get very boring. Alright, so this is A Rare Bird, Chapter 1. The beginning of the end. There is a prophecy of which the people speak. The purge of the ultimate race must take place. Once the last of all fades, the promised land will last for all days. In an ancient story of legend and memory, help will come from thy enemy. With every prophecy there comes a legend. The stories have crossed people's lips in a mere whisper, as the fear of an ancient calamity repeating itself would be forever fresh in their minds. It all started with the death and birth of the last Novas. The Novas are nothing but pure energy taken in the form of a human. They walk, talk, and feel as a human does, and yet society has considered them less than. They weren't considered human, therefore they were easily disposed of. Disgusting thinking wasn't always like this. But the prophecy that has leaked from the lips of the Novas has caused uproar in the world of man. Humans have misinterpreted the prophecy, thinking it was about them. They feared the Novas would kill off the human race so their precious promised land would come. A utopia could never exist in a world surrounded by man, for mankind only knew how to suck the earth dry and devour its promises. The humans thought the Novas, in order to create their promised land, would kill off the human race. So they retaliated on the Novas. They were going to kill the creatures before they could kill off the humans, even when that was never their intention. The humans made this idea in their head, and from their fears they acted impulsively. Once the humans cut off the first couple of Novas, they noticed small orbs floated above the bodies of the deceased. Men gave off green orbs, while the women gave off red orbs after death. The humans soon realized this pure energy could be used for their cars, for their lights, buildings, technology advancements, and an easier lifestyle. A whole organization called the Core Company jumped at the dollar signs. Their entire company was changed forever. Greed consumed many, and the murders of these Novas were even considered okay and as easy as wiping a slate completely clean. People no longer even cared or feared the prophecy. They were no longer killing in fear, but in greed. Core was paying top dollar for the orbs of a dead Nova. They were able to upgrade their advances in technology. Though many stayed for this life of luxury at the cost of death and slaughter, many humans fled. They entered the forest and created small villages. They were even said to have hidden Novas from the guards working for Core's CEO. The villagers refusing to evolve in a bad light like the many other humans were proof that there was still good in people. Thanks to the humans who stayed to slaughter for profit, potential in mankind remained hidden. Unfortunately, the disgusting habits of mankind were considered normal, and anything other than what's considered normal was looked down upon as the rejects of society hid in the woods. It was their only way to escape the traps of greed, deception, and blood-stained hands. The Novas that fled to the woods lived with the humans. While in their temporary freedom and safety, they taught the humans about a small part of the prophecy. They told the good humans that the beginning of the prophecy was fulfilled, but not in the way the humans thought. The purge spoken of in the prophecy did occur, but it was never talking about the humans' lives being in jeopardy. It spoke of the lives of the Novas ending. But as humans, they only assumed they were the ultimate race that would come to an end. The rest of the prophecy, however, was unknown to even the Novas. The humans in Core City realized their moneymakers and access to an easy and lazier lifestyle was fading away. The Nova's population grew ridiculously low. So did the humans decide to change their ways? No. Instead, Core's CEO ordered a massive hunting group to enter the woods. The humans found their prey in the villages, and the humble humans had no technology, or guns for that matter, to protect their friends, the Novas. They were taken to the company and were treated like dogs. Worse than that, the remaining weren't killed, but was forced to mate to produce more children. The offspring would only be raised up to age 18 to either mate to create more children for profit or die themselves for profit. They were being farmed and killed off again. It was a horrendous cycle that one Nova would shatter to pieces. A Nova finally reached age 18. A new guard was ordered to her section of the cell. They kept tabs on all of those in the cells and knew she had to have just reached appropriate age. The guard was ordered to kill her because they already had 20 Novas breeding, plus the other 12 about ready to give birth to more dollar signs. And that's all they were thought of to the humans. He looked into her deep green eyes and he couldn't kill her. They assigned 2 younger guard and he couldn't sort through the consequences of letting her go. His desire for her grew and conquered out the fear of the consequences. He didn't kill her, but he couldn't let her go either. He always made sure she was okay, and he hid her in his house. He told his officials that he did kill her, but she was defective, like some offspring from a human and Nova combination could be. So they believed him when he said she produced no energy when she died, for she was a defective child. It was a lie, of course, but she appreciated his help. They ended up having a child together, but one day the infant began to cry and a guard heard. He told the other guards, and word spread around that the young man has had no woman in his life. Therefore, how could he have had a child? Shroud knew the CEO sent the guards to infiltrate his home. They were found out, but the guards fought his fellow workers off, giving the Nova the chance to escape. She fled with her infant in her arms. She reached the train station and hid in the crowds from the guards chasing after her. Just as she entered the train and the doors were about to close, a bullet penetrated into the Nova's chest, barely scraping past a tiny hair on the baby girl's head. The doors closed so the guards couldn't get to her, but she was still stuck with the bullet in her chest. It was late and she was the only living soul on that part of the train. She sat there and started to sob. She knew she would never be free and her people already in captivity were doomed, but she looked into her baby girl's green eyes and she knew that she would be an exception to the rule. She would escape. The train reached its destination and the Nova stumbled into the crowd as everyone awed in shock. Many of the humans tried to help her, but once they saw the green mark of a spiral on her wrist, they realized she was a Nova, so the sympathy went out the window. No one cared for Novas. They only cared because they thought she was a human at first. Only one human, regardless of her knowledge of her mark as a Nova, ran to her side. This blonde-haired woman with soft features and bright blue eyes held back her watery eyes. She held her baby to the woman to whisper, "Take care of my child, please, take Ava." The woman took Ava into her arms as the Nova perished on the floor. This tall and lean woman rocked the child and smiled until she heard shouting. Many guards rushed through the crowd to get to the dark pink orb hovering over her body. The woman took Ava away as the guards all fought over who would bring the prize home. It seemed death didn't even affect anyone anymore because it was so common and almost easy to steal a soul. The Novas thought of the young woman who almost escaped and failed. They decided enough was enough, and that if the humans wouldn't be affected by death, then neither would they. They refused to keep breeding to create more dollar signs for the humans. They would rather die than continue to be used. So eventually all of the Novas ceased to exist. The humans thought the Nova race had become extinct, but the CEO knew better and remembered the crying coming from the guard's room. There was a child involved and only the mother was found at the train station. The idiotic guards didn't think to question that the child was absent from the mother's arms. The death and birth of the last Novas was the start of something new. It was the start to the beginning and end of the prophecy. Ava was a rare bird indeed, but she knew little of her origins. Only her adoptive mother, Kendra, knew more about her past and dangerous future. She knew people would be after her for her energy. Kendra thought she knew everything there was to know about Novas. But Ava, even as a little child, could teach Kendra a few things. Kendra waited at the train station every day, waiting for her husband, who was in the war, to come home. Many wars broke out during the purge of the Novas, but the wars were never for a good cause, like trying to spare them from the hands of death and greed. The wars were meant for dominion, rights, and proper distribution of the Nova's profits. Any achievement thus far in the age of man was motivated by greed. While Kendra's husband hadn't returned, and yet she still had hope, so she waited at the train station. But one day, she took Ava to wait at the train station with her. Ava let go of Kendra's hands and dropped to the floor. She started to put her ear to the ground, and she looked like she was listening to sounds or voices that couldn't even be picked up by bloodhounds. Kendra picked up Ava. "You look absurd, child. Get up," she said as she looked around to the crowds, embarrassed. Ava dusted herself off, and in her timid little voice she said, "Your husband is one with the earth now. I'm sorry, Mom." She was only 6 and she spoke such a mature sentence. It was a sentence that Kendra didn't quite understand until she got home with Ava later that day. She received a letter in the mail stating that her husband had died in the war. She questioned how Ava could possibly have known that her husband had died before the mail even reached its destination. She crushed the paper in her hands and rushed upstairs to sob for days and days. Kendra felt the memories of her husband remained in every spot of her home. She had to leave. She decided to move not only to escape the memories but for the protection of Ava. She ventured to the villages of the woods. It was a place she always wanted to go, but Kendra promised her husband that she would wait for him, and she did, till the very end. Now she could leave, knowing nothing else kept her tied to such a horrible place known as Core City. Kendra was welcomed to the village with open arms, especially when the distraught villagers found out that there was a sole survivor of the genocide. Ava was officially the last of her kind, and she was cherished by the villagers. They all looked out for her like she was their own child. They felt she was the last tied to the prophecy, so they kept their eagle eyes on her constantly. She was still a sly little thing, for she was able to sneak out at night through her window. She stayed on the outside of the village until she started to hear whispers. She followed the voices that always came to her, whether she was asleep or wide awake. They were more like murmurs, and she could never make out what the voices were saying to her. They were still quite welcoming and sweet. She followed the echoing voices until she stumbled upon an old school. When she stepped inside to see cobwebs and dusty seats and creaky flooring, she realized it was an abandoned school. She walked down the center of the long brown benches and found a broken tile in the center. She looked around to see a giant oval window at the very front of the school, past the stage. It seemed the school system moved on to Core City while this one was left behind. She looked to see the gigantic moon shining through. She sat by the small broken tile, which held nothing but a small dirt patch beneath the flooring. She moved her hand through the moon's rays of light, and she twisted her fingers through it. She then started to twirl her fingers, and the rays started to rush around her hand. She could literally see the energy forming around her fingers in a light gray twirl. She started to wave her fingers around, frightened, until some voices finally became understandable. "Place the energy in the ground," the voice said softly. Ava calmed and placed her finger into the dirt. When she pulled her finger out of the ground, a long vine followed her hand until it formed into a full-grown yellow lily. She looked to her hands and then to the moon, confused. She used the energy of the moon to create a flower. She had powers not yet known to her fragile mind. She put her ear to the ground again to try to hear the voices again. "What did I do?" But there was no answer. Ava ran out of the abandoned school and was too spooked to return. As she grew older, the voices became less and less understandable. From what she did make out, it sounded like the planet was talking to her, for it would say, "You're the only one who can help me now. Don't let me run out of energy. The humans constantly pollute me and suck me dry of resources. If they kill me, they kill themselves." She started to ignore the voices asking for her help. She shut out the voices as she didn't know how to help the planet anyway. Each new year of her life, Ava would return to the abandoned school. Every time she became a year older, she would tear off a broken tile from the dirt patch. To her surprise, the yellow lily had stayed strong and never wilted. What she and the villagers didn't realize was, when she visited the school that first day, a member of the core squad had been stationed at the village to scout out any possible existing novas, including the missing infant. He's kept tabs on the village, and he knew this young girl was a new addition to the village, but Shroud of the core company told him not to act, only to keep an eye on her and make sure she stayed put. He's watched her go into the school several times until she turned to the fresh and deadly age of 18. The scout then left back to Core City to inform Shroud that Ava was of proper age. She had no clue that she was being spied on for all these years. She still didn't understand what she was. She went to the abandoned school as usual and tore off yet another tile to add to the patch of dirt. She had grown a yellow lily for herself. Each time she had another number added to her age. So in the patch of dirt were 18 yellow lilies. None of them had withered since she grew them. She sat there and looked at the flowers, wondering if the voices would ever return to tell her about herself. But the voices have disappeared completely. She concluded that if the voices were from the planet itself and they suddenly stopped, then maybe something was horribly wrong with the Earth. As Ava contemplated her situation, Shroud had bigger plans for her. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I have to end this video, but click a Rare Bird Chapter 1 Part 2 so you can continue. Thanks, guys!